Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Biggening Corporation. We're on episode 18 already. It doesn't feel like it, but here we are. I'm going to 20 episodes in, start skipping the recap. It's only 10-15 seconds, but I think at this point we can say safely that if someone is joining this late in the game that they have some awareness of the project, and I'm about to start doing every 10 episodes or so, I will do a recap of the previous 10. So we will do that as a separate thing and probably skip the recap from now on. And I think that'll help us get a little faster into the objectives of the day, which today we're going to play the game Fishing for Vendors. We had spent some time with our purchasing bots, and they're rocking and rolling and posting away and creating lots of transactions, and I'm enjoying seeing all of that happen. It's wonderful. If we go look at our stock of fabric parts in our test company 5, they're probably getting a little crazy levels on hand. Yep, we're even with just 10 to 20 each time, we're already up to about 9,000 of them. So eventually the pile of data that is going to be in this company is not going to be a practical amount of information for us from a development perspective, but that's okay. We'll get to retest our company initialization procedure in the not too distant future, but I would like to get some more of the bots working first. And since we are having the one bot working at creating the ordering for this fabric parts, where I would like to go next is I would like to handle the scenario we talked about where if the purchasing bots are not assigned, I would like them to try to find new suppliers. And as part of that, then we will migrate the parts that supplier will sell. We will migrate that into the vendor item table for vendor prices. And that seems like a fine way to go. So the plan all along was 3 tiers of types of items, and vendors for now are only going to sell the bottom level. Everything else is either assembled or manufactured by the system, by our company. So yeah, that gives us a nice short list of potential items that a supplier might sell. Now we get into some interesting challenges. I had built a prospect table. Prospect list. So I have a prospect table here that we created in an earlier episode where we can see the potential suppliers, their orders per day and quantity per order, and even their potential trades. So we've got the data structure for that. We have nothing that populates it. My thinking on this is that we need to populate this, but we need to have a sensible rate of population to this. For example, at the moment, our first tier bot, which is our basic purchasing bot, typing and talking at the same time, our basic bot here has 2 operations per day. A player might have 5 or 6 purchasing bots that are higher tiers with upgrades, and between all of them it could be 40, 50, 60 operations per day. So I don't want to generate that many prospects, so the player has some reason to try to look for new suppliers as we go forward, but they shouldn't be swimming in possibilities. So my thinking is that much like the tech tree we've done so far, where research points count towards having a research complete, I'm thinking that we will have the purchasing operations per day to farming for or fishing for suppliers will accumulate and increase the probability of finding some better options for the player to choose from for suppliers and that sort of thing. So the challenge with that is we're going to need to keep track of what's our what's our points? What's the game design logic? What drives? How often should a player expect to find suppliers? Like if they're throwing all of their purchasing bots at it, and they've got an army of like 30 of them, should they find 2 per day? Should they find 10 per day? I'm not really sure what the good game balance of this is. And I imagine that will depend significantly on how we implement the pricing logic to try to drive how and also the max operations per day to drive what sort of throughput a player can get and what value they can get from suppliers. And my thinking is that suppliers are going to be pretty tightly constrained because I think that will encourage expanding wide and having to deal with lots more bots. I think that's more fun as a concept. So, given that, I'm thinking if we're looking at let's do some game craft theory here. If we have 10 purchasing bots that are basic and they do 2 operations per day, I think I want them to find and here we get into the game day versus real world day. I would want them to only find a couple of suppliers and maybe in an 8-hour real world span, which if we think about that, that's 30 days. So yeah, 2 a month at a rate of 20 of them. Okay. So 30 times our 20, we're looking at about somewhere between 500 to 700 purchasing effort, I guess we could call it, towards finding the next supplier. Okay. Well, since we don't really know what's going to be effective, we need this to be a little bit of a variable. And we need the system administrator to be able to tweak this and change it over the flow of the game in case there are some handling. And, maybe you're playing a hard mode where you want players to have to work harder to get more. I don't know. So, I gotta add to my git ignore to ignore open Word documents. I keep being like, what's the change? No, nothing. Okay, what I'm gonna do then is, regardless of how many purchasing bots are chugging along against the fishing task, the trying to find a new supplier, I'm thinking it'll be a company-wide result set, so the effort should be company-wide as well. That way you can throw 50 bots at something and upgrade them all and go nuts. So the progress that a player has made towards finding the next supplier can be stored at a per company level. And the way I think that from a system administrative point of view, to control the target minimal amount of effort that or points that the research should result in, that will be a good game setting. So we're gonna make that our goal for today and how we're handling the fishing thing. We're gonna add a new game setup, and we are going to update. So there are snippets and I need to get better at using them. Okay, so we are going to make a new field that is purchase I'm not sure what to label this because we're not doing research points equivalent exactly. Purchase effort. Let's go with that. And this is the target purchase prospect effort. There we go. This is the effort towards finding your next purchase prospect. So, there we go. Okay, and we'll... Let's just do that. wonder what snippet I used yesterday that conveniently gave me the duplicating caption. I'll have to find that again. Okay, so that's the game setup, and we need to add this to... We're going to add a new group to our game setup because the game setup will probably have lots of like balancing areas, and I think the most logical thing to do would be to do that based on the different areas of which the bots are operating in. So let's do a purchasing section where we will add our purchasing prospect effort. There we go. Cool. Alright, so now we can configure that, and I think I won't set a init value, a default, for that to be populated. I think that's something we'll have to play with. No big deal there. Okay, so at the company level, we were talking about having something keep track of how much effort has been completed. Interesting. So here's an example of folder structures can be beneficial but also restrictive in a way. I had, as part of our efforts, created a new core extension for when we're extending core BC functionality. I created that after the fact, after we had already expanded or extended the company information. And at the time, I was extending company information in relation to master company. But now I'm going to be adding some new company information behind the scenes related to a player company. So this is a good example of these guys need to move off to the core extension folder, I am sure. That will mess with GitHub a little bit. I think, like I said, I think we can stage just those moving from one folder to the other, and it would have detected it. When I check these all in as a batch, it'll see it as a delete and then an untracked checking in. So we are going to lose the GitHub history on those objects. For this project, that's not the worst thing in the world, so that's okay. All right, so we're going to have another hidden, non-editable little field hiding behind the scenes that is going to keep track of the efforts our purchasing bots have put into trying to find the next prospect. Purchase prospect effort. Named pretty much the same thing as the other field in the setup, but that's okay. The context matters. Great. And this is also going to be an editable false system metadata field. Super duper. I am not going to show this information on the page. We just needed it to live somewhere, and on a per company information, this made good sense as a place to put it. So there we go. Excellent. Now we can update our purchasing bots to say, okay, here we had some code where we just said, look, if the purchasing bot is ticking along, then throw an error because we don't have any logic in place to handle fishing for a new prospect. Well, now we're going to write that. So let's create some new logic on down here. Let's see. I keep calling it fishing for prospects, so we'll label it that. Sounds good. Fishing. Sure. And that is why the dangling space is for lower hanging characters. Okay, so in our case, we are going to need the bot instance because we need to know how many operations per day, so we'll pass that as a parameter. And I think that'll be it. So, alright, perfect. Local fish for fig. Yep, fish for prospect. Okie dokie. And in this case, we will take which bot, and we will do a record that is the bot instance. And we know we are going to need the company information, because that's where we're parking our hidden progress variable. And we are going to also want to grab our game setup table, because that'll tell us if we've made it. Cool. Alright. And yes, that does help. Procedure. Alright, so we need to we're going to throw an error if there's no company info, and we will throw an error if there's no game setup, because we need those to exist. Honestly, these could be combined, but I'll probably throw some different error messages in there. At the moment, I'm going to leave these error messages blank. It's just going to stop this function and call it a day. I'm okay with that for right now, but we will eventually have different messages to better indicate in the log what just happened. And then we also need to do company info, and actually game setup.test field. Our purchase prospect effort. I believe test field with a decimal and integer will check to make sure it's not 0. Let's check that, actually, because test field data type. Well, that's interesting. Okay. Beautiful. Part of the testing toolkit, which I'm not going to fight with right this second. Okay. Yep, you can test against a specified value. And if it is against an empty string, it has to be other than blank or 0. Cool. It's been a while since I've checked for 0 values in a field. So, and typically I code my own error message rather than just fall back on test field. But in this case, we're going for least effort for the moment. Cool. So the way we're going to handle this is we'll now do company info purchase prospect effort equals. I don't think, from a coding perspective, by the way, I think the code still supports, plus equals. I don't know that that's officially supported yet. It's been in the Cal product forever and a day, but unofficially, and they've never said that it's an allowed thing to do. I don't know if that's official yet or not. It would be nice to have unary operator type thing like that, because this line of code would be less hideous. We'll see, maybe. And I am going to, for now, just do nice and simple, just add the operations per day of this bot. Eventually, we will need to do a find reference on the operations per day field wherever I point to this, and we're probably going to have a function on the bot instance that is the calculated total operations per day instead. Actually, even as I'm saying it, I'm already going, I don't want to have that as a someday thing and write a whole bunch of wrong code. I'm thinking of that because operations per day is a base value, and then we're going to have potential upgrades coming into effect, and maybe even technology research coming into effect. Yeah, we need this to be a procedure, and the most logical place to put this, honestly, is right on the bot. So let's get ops per day, and this will return a decimal. And for now, then making the for now part of this much easier, we will exit rec.operations per day. Yeah. Okay. So that means that in our code, hang on a second here, shrink this down, because that's an awkward thing. I had already started to code against operations per day, and that should not be anymore. Get ops per day. Cool. I believe that was one of the only real places that that's used. We do have also a few more references to power per day, and that's an issue. So let's real quick, while we're at it, get things fixed up. Operations per day has a lot of references, and that makes sense because right now I've got all the different bot types looking at that. I thought maybe I don't. Interesting. What are all of our references of this? Oh, yeah, that's just okay. It is all the bots spitting that back as part of their string. That's no big deal. And then that's the assignment one, so that's fine. All of these little odds and ends are going to be rewritten anyways because this is just garbage string to let us know it's working. However, that is not the case here in the supply research, so let's fix that. Get ops per day. Cool. Alright, and that's fine there. We'll eventually need to display to the player what the resultant set of operations per day is, so that way they have a better understanding, base versus calculated, but we don't need to do that right now. Alright, and the other thing, similar sort of vibe, we have power per day, and honestly we should be doing research per operation as a similar thing, so that way we have the ability to calculate it and potentially do bonuses against it. So power, operations, research. Sounds fine. I'm going to keep them in the same order down here just because neurotic. Honest. And at the moment all they do is just return the value of the field. And that's fine. We're going to speed this along here. Get research per op. Cool. And then over here in our research code unit, we've got some uses for this here. Get research per op, and I know in our power usage management, here is where we're pulling the power for per day to charge. So we will instead do get power per day. Thankfully, we're still small enough in our code that I know where a lot of these usages are. So that's excellent. Power per day, we should be down to a pretty small number of references on that. Just so that I'm all up to date, I'm going to close everything, and there we go. Just occasionally I've found that the reference count isn't quite right. Okay, and that's just that, and that's just that. Perfect. So that's fine. And our research per day is equally sparse. We only, I did not mean to click peak definition, but thank you. Yep, same thing. This little chunk of code where everything is still being used is when the instances are being created, so that is perfectly fine and reasonable. Okay, excellent. Alright, so that's a little bit tidier before we get too deep into using the field values when I plan not to use field values later. Okay, so that gets us our company info, purchase effort, and we will modify that. True is fine. You know, we don't, at the moment we don't have any need to call validation. I'm not validating the value of the field, and I don't really need to validate that I'm modifying it. So this is just a working kind of parked value. I am not at this point going to hook any events or business logic off of this field except for the code I'm about to write right below it. So no harm, no foul in this modify false, and that'll reduce how much chitter chatter the purchasing bots are going to do, since each and every bot is going to modify the value of this field. So this could be more efficient. We could calculate the total amount of research prospecting effort, some fishing effort that they're doing, and then modifying it with the total, so we're not calling modify lots and lots of times. I don't think we need to optimize to that level just yet. I hope. We'll see. Especially if someone ends up using this to generate demo data and runs their game day every 2 minutes instead, it could get a little frenetic in their system. Well, alright, well, that's fine. So now we're going to see if the company info purchase prospect effort is greater than the game setup purchase prospect effort. Then yeah, we can generate a prospect right as part of this code unit. I think that'll be okay. So, super easy here. We have our prospect table and we have our prospect trades. And in the case of our vendor prospects, it's going to be nice and simple, where ID is going to be something, that, yeah, this could be auto-incrementing. Again, it's just an ID. There's no harm there. I haven't created any prospects yet in any system, so we're fine. Okay, and it's, unique ID. That works. And then we'll need which type. We'll need to throw a name on it. We'll need to throw maximum orders per day, quantity per order, and then the related trades. Okay. Neat. So we've got our bots here, and I know that I anticipate creating multiple tiers of bots. I'm intending to make 3 tiers of bots. So how are we going to know which tier this bot is? There's nothing actually on the instance that is controlling that or indicating that in any way. So we're going to need to update our bot template and our bot instances to handle that. I'm just going to go with a nice easy integer on this, and that way we can kind of do some math against what tier a bot is. We could just as easily use an option or an enum, but I think integer will be okie doke for this. I don't honestly have even the slightest sense of how many people will try to run this as a game rather than potentially use it as a data tool, so that's something that's interesting. Let's do the same to our bot template, because for a given bot template it might have different tiers. Great. And then in our bot instance, bot management, we need to populate that from the template when we create an instance. And I realize I'm jumping kind of all over the place today. We're seeing so many objects touched. It's just the way of it. That's fine. Okay, so now we have at least that. It's nothing that's visible on the page at the moment, and I'm not sure if it matters if it is, because it's going to be different types of bots and everything like that. We'll see if we need to add that anywhere. Okay, so what we were doing was down here in the purchasing side, we're looking at creating a prospect, and a prospect has the minimum, maximum orders per day, maximum quantity per order. My thinking of why I added the tier right now is because I'm thinking that the different tiers of bots that are looking for these might impact the orders per day and quantity per order. That creates an interesting challenge, though. From a game mechanic point of view, I'm having this tick along. So if we have a tier 1 that ticks for 2, and then we have a tier 3 that ticks for, say, 10, and then maybe it's the last little one comes from another tier 1 bot, and that one ticks over. Now my tier 1 bot is the one that found it. So, well, I mean, that gives the players a balanced reason to consider whether or not they use tier 1 bots for prospecting versus selling it and trying to buy a tier 1 instead, tier 2 or tier 3 instead. You know what I think I will do with this? We are ticking through the ops per day. We're ticking through the purchasing bots. I'm thinking that here in the bot dispatcher, in the bot dispatcher, we are sorting based on the default sort, which is, I think, just bot type and then ID. So we can make it a nice easy game rule that higher tier bots always tick first. I kind of like that. It's an easy to understand workflow rule. So then if players do have lower tier bots, they will tick later. They're slower. That's kind of their jam. Okay, yeah, that works. That means that in the bot instance, we should, for our sanity's sake, have a key that is named like tier, that is based on the bot tier. And it should also, since we're finally creating a key for something that we're sorting on anyways, we should also really sort first by bot type, because in our cycling through the different bots, we are filtering on type, and then we want it sorted by tier. So that sounds good. And if we want the faster ones to always go first, we will need to use this descending, I believe. I always lose my train of thought on the order of ascending versus descending in the AL world. Okay, so set current key, because we are now using a key. Hooray for bot type and bot tier. And we will set ascending false. I thought. Oh, that's right. Old school is that you had to just say true or false, but this is after you set the keys. You have to say which ascending or descending you're doing by field, whereas it used to be entirely by the key. So that's nice. And we want there. Okay. So now we'll do descending by tier, and our bot type will group more efficiently. Excellent. And I don't think we muck with the filtering in our runs here. We do not. Cool. So that now is a nice workflow of, if you are potentially wanting your bots to be farming for prospects or fishing for prospects, you don't want to have your low-level bots doing it, because you might get lower quality results. That seems reasonable. Okay. But that gives us a nice new setting we should have for, again, game balance. There are some things that are going to be built in game balance to hard-coded into the system, but most of the time, if I can, I try to move those off to settings. So from a purchase prospect, which I'm going to abbreviate, tier multiplier. A wacky little field name, but that's what I'm going to go with. Sure. So what we're going to do for our game balance here is when the bots are looking, just notice that's to be classified. When the bots look for a prospect, if it's a tier 2, then per tier we'll use this multiplier against it. So init value equals 1. And I think I'll actually make this a decimal so people can have a little fun with it if they want to fiddle with these settings. Okay, so what the heck did all that mean? What was all the effort on that? Let's go into it. We need to also have not only these setups, but we need to have prospect, which I'm going to regret naming it that. I seem to just have a terrible time typing that word. I'm not sure why. And we'll also need the trades for that prospect, which I'm just going to shorten trades. Cool. Okay, so now our, and we also need our random name pool. A little later on, I might move the handling of this random name pool out to a code unit to do duplicate checking so we don't accidentally pull from the random name pool twice. The odds of that are a little low at the moment, but I think I should have a code unit that does a quick, if this prospect or vendor or customer already exists by this name, try again kind of thing. But for that, I'll spin it off to a new little utility code unit, and I'm not doing that right this second. We're cruising our way through our time pretty quickly, and I want to get this done. So we are going to make a new prospect, and let's see. So this one, our prospect is going to be automatically numbered. We're going to make it a type of vendor. We're going to get a random name, and then we're going to do some math on these values. Cool. Okay. This is a vendor type, and I'm going to real quick just create a local procedure, get random name, and that way we can move it off to a function later, because I'm against the idea of not handling this at least a little bit right now in a way that we can reference later, which means we can pull this far out of here. Okay. Now, how was I going to do random pulling on this one? Let's do find first. If not find first, then we'll, again, later, we'll add a nice clear error message for our system admin. I'm just watching the clock carefully here. If we find first, great. Then what we'll do is we will random name pool dot next random number random name pool dot count -1. Whee! A crazy little bit of code that we don't normally have to do in an ERP system. Randomness is almost never the goal, but what this will do is it goes to the very first record and does a random from 1 to the count of records -1, because after all, next to 0 is perfectly valid, and then we will exit with the value of what we found. For the moment, we're just going to spit out this company name. that's perfectly fine. There are more fields on that, contact, email address, etc., etc. We can ignore that for the moment. The company names and the random name pool are all unique. That is their point, after all. So later on, when we convert this prospect to a vendor, we can go ahead and do a find on that. I don't like that. That's ugly. Okay, real quick. Super tiny aside, but I can't leave bad code alone. Prospect entry. Actually, whoops. Random entry source number, and this is coming from the entry number of the random pool table. I've got a lot of to be classified hanging around in here. That's going to bug me. We could do a table relationship here, but it's an auto-incrementing field. I don't need the drop-down to work, I don't think. Yeah, we'll do it anyways. Okay, against the BCS random name pool. Nice and simple code on that one at least. And back here in the purchase side of things, instead of doing it this way, yeah, let's pass the prospect in as a var. We'll not spit back a text, and instead we'll take the prospect.name is equal to the random name pool dot company name, and the prospect random entry source number equals random name pool dot entry number. That way we can dig it up later. Okay, now at this point in the code, we've passed it into this function. We still haven't called an insert with it. I also still haven't called the function with it, so that's always a good thing. One reference, not zero. Okay, so now we've got the name of this prospect, and we were going to additionally set the quantities and orders per day. I hate to do it, but I really do need to have purchasing prospect base max orders. This can be an integer, and the init value on that can be 10, and this is in game setup, so it affects everywhere. Max quantity. Okay. Sure. Integer. Alright, great. Let's say, for example, a max quantity per order. Let's do 50. Why not? That way they can order up to 500 per day from a supplier. Sounds good. Alright, and we can smoosh all these together in the same field range. That's fine. Get rid of that error. And now we have even more reason for this little purchasing tab. So we're going to real speedy like add the and max orders, max quantity. Great. I think that's everything that we need from that. Yep, sounds good. No, we have the tier multiplier as well. Didn't even add that to the setup here. Okay, so there we go. A whole bunch of purchasing settings that are going to be in game setup, and we at some point will need to consolidate. We're not going to do it right now. We're going to have to consolidate some test fields to pre-validate a lot of these game setup settings, because it's not practical to do all of these test fields, I don't think. Not in each and every function where we would need these. Okay, great. and last but not least, also our purchasing multiplier. There we go. Lots and lots of stuff. So now we can say our prospect maximum orders per day equals our base max orders per day times, exciting, we're going to multiply. Tiers are going to be a big deal, so multiplication, not addition, times the bot. I thought we had the instance here. Yeah, which bot dot bot tier times our game setup tier multiplier. So if our tier multiplier is just 1 and our bot tier is 2, then a tier 2 bot will be double the number of orders per day. And we'll do a very, very similar chunk of code here on the max quantity per order, game setup, max quantity times, which I don't need the parentheses there. It's just habit. I'm grouping them together in case I need to do some logic later on rounding or anything like that. Which bot? Yeah, bot tier times game setup tier multiplier. So yes, from a purely programmatical and even code clarity standard, I don't need the parentheses there. It's 3 values times each other, but I could easily need some rounding going on. So speaking of which, that's decimal. I do in fact want to round all the big results of this because I don't want them to have 1.2 orders per day. That would make no sense. And I'm okay with rounding to the nearest value. That's perfectly serviceable to me. So up or down, whichever. And finally, last but not least, we insert. And I'll go ahead and validate here in case there's code someday that hooks onto that event. Now, for the trades, we need to decide how do we want to handle this. At the moment, I've got it designed that I have 6 class 1 items. I don't know if I want to have the tiers affect the number of trade possibilities for a given item a prospect might have. I think so. So let's note this. We're into the trade creation. So I'm thinking that at a base level, a supplier will supply 1 item, and for each additional tier of bot, we will supply 2 additional items. So you don't end up with a supplier that gives you all 6 of the base materials in the game. If you were playing a game where you've got 400 base materials or something like that, then that might be something that you need to potentially handle differently. But I'm okay with writing it for our target purpose for the moment, and letting some event handling, because you could hook onto the prospect table here. Ooh, that's a good call. Hang on a second here. Something that we should do as part of this code right now. If someone wants to handle trade creation differently, how do you make your code friendly about not running if someone wants your code to step out of the way? That's a fun one. Let's do a new little section. Events. We are in a code unit, so we can certainly do publishing from in here. So let's do some events. And we are going to make t-event publish business. We don't need to include sender in this case. That's fine. So on before prospect trades, and we will supply a prospect, which is the prospect. We will also, good idea to supply that as a var. I lose my mind when I hook onto an event and it's not var, so I'm not going to be mean and do likewise. And let's see. I think since our next step in the trade creation process is filtering the item list to the class of items that vendors will supply, it might be nice to master items, mater items, get her done, no thank you, BCS, master item. Let's also pass the master item, we'll pass the master item, that way if an event wanted to pre-filter the master items, and maybe in your game you only want to have a certain type of item or subset of items, master items, and then always run trigger boolean. I hate having events like this and not having on run trigger. So we are going to need a run trigger. We're going to need a boolean to pass to that. So now before we do all of our standard trade creation, we want to say we're going to pass prospect, we're going to pass master item, and if run trigger. If run trigger, then begin. Now, if someone hooks onto this event and they set that run trigger to false, then no big deal, we won't do anything. That seems perfectly cool to me. And anytime I'm doing an on before, it just seems rude not to also provide an on after. So I'm not going to be rude. So in this case, we're going to do on after prospects trades, and on after, it doesn't make any sense at all to pass a run trigger at this time, but what it would make sense to me is passing the results of what we did. So trades record BCS trades, cool, because we're not going to hook any dependencies on that if. So now on after prospect trades, prospect, and then trades. There we go. That way if someone wants to poke through the trades after we've done our creation of them, great, power to them. If they want to kill the whole thing, great, power to them. Alright, so now for our master items, we want to set range on, I have my item classes in the product posting group. So for the fact that we're running out of time, I'm going to go ahead and just hard code class 1 in there. The event could say no thank you. Cool. Alright, so now the way we need to handle this is we need to decide how many of the master items do we want to throw into the trade table here. Nope, wrong table. Here we are. And that'll just be a straight up we have line number in here. I was just looking at the PK. We have prospect number and line number. Line number is not an auto split key because that is not something that the player would generate. So there is, again, no harm at all for this to be auto increment because we're going to only insert it with code. So let's get that in there. That way we don't have to write any code to handle inserting those. Okay, so now we need a little I. I'm glad that that's still community accepted practice. It'd be really annoying if it wasn't. For I is equal to 1 to which bot dot bot tier, which could just be 1. We will need to pick a random master item. You know what I am going to do then? Because I need to be able to pick up to, say 3 items from the master item, and it would make no sense at all to have duplicates. We're going to make a little temporary copy of the master item. Temp master item, so we can park which ones we have used. And temporary. There we go. Okay. So similar sort of code as we did before. Master item, if master item dot find first, then we can master item dot next random master item dot count -1, because next to 0 we can do 0 steps, that's fine. And what we are going to do is repeat until we're going to repeat this little random loop here until my brain had it a second ago. Tired at the end of the day here. We need to until temp master item dot get master item dot code, and we want it not. There we go. So until we manage to find an item in the master table that's not in here, we need to kind of loop our way through this table. And for safety's sake, whenever we're potentially looping into infinity, it is possible that if, say, for example, someone configures bot tier 7 and there are only 6 items, this won't work. So what I'm going to then also do is we will have just a safety net of just a little j iterative here. We'll do the nice ugly little logic to say, okay, you know what, if you've gone through this table 20 times and we didn't manage to find something, then something went wrong. And we'll I'm okay with just randomly hard coding that to a 20 ceiling for now. That feels acceptable. Yeah. Let's also do up here temp master item dot reset, and that way if temp master item dot code does not equal blank, then we know everything went fine. Otherwise we have ourselves a situation where there was no items available, like the tier setting is too high for the number of master items in class 1 somehow. Again, we'll need an error message there, but I'm at an hour, so I'm trying to wrap this up in the next couple minutes. So if the code doesn't equal blank, oh, you know, this will this will never be true. Okay. Yep, brilliant. Okay. Pardon for 1 second, my brain thinking this through here. So we've selected a random one on master item, and we haven't found it in temp master item. So so this should be blank. We're looking for not getting in our temp master item. So if the temp master item equals blank, then all is well. That's a good result. That means that it hasn't been processed already, and we can then we can rely on the fact that the master item is now on the record we need. So temp master item, we are going to not run any logic, no triggers. We can park a copy of our master item in there, and that way this item that we have selected next time around is not available to select again. That's perfectly fine. Now we know which one we want, and it has safely been selected, so now we finally create a trade. This is a little funky code. I totally concede that. It probably could be a little less ugly, but this is what I'm going with at this time of day. So prospect number is equal to our prospect.number, our trades dot trade type is equal to trade, no, true. It's not going to help me. Trade type of item. Later when we do sales-based prospecting, then we will potentially have category-driven type ones, and then the trade code is equal to our master item dot code. Cool. And in this case, true. Also a good idea here to trades dot reset, get it all nice and tidy as a variable and ready to roll, and parentheses and semicolon if you guys cannot disagree with each other. Cool. Excellent. So theoretically we should get trades from our bots farming for prospects now. Okay. That's a lot of unsaved work. Crazy and dangerous. Cool. Here we are at an hour, and we're doing our first publish of the episode. Sure. It's a little nuts, but sure. I'm not surprised that that's taking a moment to update that schema. We've made a lot of table changes. You can do it. It's on force sync, so it's not got a huge amount to do, and we've kept our company count kind of low-ish. You can do it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is real quick, I'm going to go set the game setup values, and we are going to unassign our create a couple of new purchasing bots. I'm going to intentionally also set the prospect effort target very, very low, so that way we can hopefully see some results of a prospect getting farmed up. I will not want to leave that there, of course. So let's say in our case it's only going to be a whopping 3. And the tier multiplier will be 1, because that's the base value that it should always be, which should not have any. It could have decimal places, probably shouldn't. Then we have the max orders per day base, and then we have the max quantity per day base. I think I said I was going to do 1050 in the default values. A init value does not affect existing records when you create them, to my sadness, but that's where we're at. Okay, bot instances, just the bot list. Cool. I'm going to create 2 new purchasing bots, real speedy like, because that'll have them both be unassigned. Actually, I'm going to go even crazier and go 3. Yeehaw. Okay, now I want the game to tick over. It might have in the intervening time. Don't care. I need it to tick now. So we might have to wait up to 60 seconds for the job queue to cruise along. We'll see. Alright, so heartbeat listener. It should be ticking any time now. 6:22 is our in-game date. And what I'm going to be looking for is... And that's a good question. Did I call this function? No. No, I did not. I still have an error in here. So the bots in question are going to error. Alright, fish for prospect. And rec. I don't want that to be camel case here, or whatever. I don't remember the name of the cases. It's fine. So that was a pointless little test run because we didn't actually call our fishing function. Yay! So what we should now see is in our bot error log, we should see some farming not yet supported errors. Makes sense. Little bit like, alright. I don't... Did that... Just checking in the event log. In our bot dispatcher, where we're handling bots... Yeah, it is work date. Okay. I just saw the dates and was a little puzzled as to their exact timing on that, but that's fine. Okay, now game setup. Cool. So, bot activity log. Show you descending. Okay. What I'm looking for is 7.5 or 7.6. We'll see if we get it. Or if I need to be impatient with the job queue. I do. It's an old chore. Should not be that buried. In process. Alright. Let's see. Do we get some magic? No. No magic. Oh. Farming not yet supported. Oh, maybe they're just not done yet. Oh. We have data. It's not quite working correctly. Okay. So it's not quite working correctly yet. But, yeah. Blue Migration Consumer Services, incremental Romeo Yankee. Alright, that was a lot more prospects than there should be, so something balance-wise is a little off there. I'm going to probably need to pause the game or even maybe start a new company because this is too many potential prospects that are going to be created between now and tomorrow's episode. And our orders per day and quantity per order are definitely not calculating correctly. I don't know if our trade prospect trade table issue that we're seeing is because of the table or the page. Whenever you're creating new fact boxes for yourself, never assume that your fact box is designed correctly. You might just have the link wrong. Always go double check your table data. That's the prospect table. That was not what I wanted, was it? No, it was not. I wanted the prospect trades. Which, as always, if you didn't know, just on the end of your URL up here, so I've got company, blah, 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 ampersand, table equals table number. And yeah, there's no data in there, so that is something in the workflow of our bot. Purchaser is not inserting those potential trades correctly. So odds are pretty high that it's probably my crazy logic. Oh, yeah, stupid thing here. I created the before and after events to handle things. Guess what I default to false? that boolean. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We default that to false. Yeah, that clown nose is definitely right. Thank you, keyboard typo. So we never even run this subroutine because I don't set that to be true. Okay, brilliant. I personally want to spend the extra minute to see if this works because I really would love it to work. Even though I need to boogie and go make dinner. I said it on Twitter and I meant it. It's sometimes I don't know where we're going to go in an episode and it's hard to start, but it is always, without question, hard to stop. In process. Oh, interesting. Okay. So we're still getting some trades, but we are not getting... we're not getting errors. Yearly library. Monitored Echo Yankee. Alright. Enjoying some of the randomness. I don't even know what's in the random name pool. I ran it through that API system and imported them, and it should be fine. We'll see. Okay. Well then, something in this convoluted preventing duplicate checking looping logic is not working the way we need it to. So I'm going to have to just troubleshoot that another time, I think. Oh man, I really want to see it working too, though. The tricky part here is that this is this is going to be running in a job queue, so the eventing around this makes it possible, but a little more challenging to troubleshoot. We have to do stuff to hook up the debugger to the job queue instance, and that's a little bit more work. It might be in my interest to take this chunk of code and move it off into a function and expose that function on temporarily on the prospect list for troubleshooting purposes, so we can just rerun it. Okay, well, I'm going to call that a wrap for today because we are pretty past time here. I'm going to boost my prospect effort to something absurd, so that way we're not ticking along in the background, creating a million prospects in the background between now and tomorrow. And I guess we will do a little bit of troubleshooting around why some of these calculations are not what they should be. It's probably all small stuff, and it is probably all silly things. Oh, yeah. Some of these, for example... Oh, I know what it is already. You know what it is already. I do. We introduced new fields called bot tier. Those are on the bot template. In none of the bots that we have right now are there any bot tier values. They're all 0. So every time we're doing any multiplication against them, they're 0. And we're trying to do a for 1 to 0 loop, which you can actually count down in a for loop. There's some different reasons so you might want to do that, but so yeah, everything about this is currently 0. Okay, cool. I didn't even need to think overnight on it, but we still were going to sadly have to wrap for today. Things to do, but we have fishing for vendors up and running. We have prospects, so we're going to tomorrow fix our our identified little bug with the issue there, and we are going to give the player the ability to convert a vendor prospect into a vendor, and in that we will handle bringing over some of the pricing logic. So thank you for sticking around again, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.